to another video. We're actually going to continue the topic of bass and samples. This is actually my third, and I think it will be my final video as I talk about how to add bass to your sample-based production. It's benefits of having a live Mark II. So this method that I want to go over is just using filters to bring out the bass from your sample that you are laying down in your sequence. So this does not require you to bring in a bass sample to start playing in your pads. You don't have to bring in a bass guitar to add on top of this or use any bass synthesizers to play on top of your sample. This is going to be grabbing the sample that you already sequenced in your timeline, duplicating that program, and then on the duplicate track, we're going to filter out that sample so we could just accentuate the bass frequencies to add and blend in with our drums and sample. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and do this with all stock plugins. It'd be really cool if you do have distortion pedals. Like, it's gonna sound so good if you have like external EQs, distortion pedals, but the MPC does provide us with some awesome plugins. So I wanna use everything stock the way it is. So if you wanna follow along with one of your tracks, go ahead and do so. Now let's go ahead and listen to this beat that I have right here. All right, so this sounds good, but it has no bass. It's just track one is going to be, track two is my sample, and track three is my one shots with my drums. Link down in the description for those drums. And right now we have no bass. So what I would do, if I don't want to add a bass sample and start putting it in a key group program and start playing it, or I don't want to use no bass synthesizer, this is actually another method. What we're going to do right now is I'm going to grab this sample. As a matter of fact, I'm going to solo the sample. This is the sample by itself. What I want you to do is pay attention to, this sample has so many frequencies. It has lows, mids, and high mids. There's a lot of frequencies right here, but I want you just to pay attention to the lower frequencies, not the cymbals, the drums, like just the rumbliness of this sample. So there's already a bass within the sample. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this program, not the track. We're going to duplicate the program. So right here on top, you will see you have sequence, and then you have your tracks, and then you have your drum program. So this sample is in track number 2. We're not going to duplicate the track. We're going to duplicate the sample or the drum program because that's where our chops are located. So let's go ahead and come down right here where it says drum program. We're going to hit this little pencil icon. And once we hit that pencil icon, we're going to select duplicate to track. Once we do that, it automatically threw us into track number 4. And you see where it says drum program, now it says sample-1. That means it's just the duplicate of what you had. So the original doesn't have a -1. The original was in track number 2, and it just says sample. The duplicate is in track number 4, which now says sample-1. Now, if we jump into our grid editor, we will see that there's actually nothing right here in our grid editor. What I can do is, you don't even have to jump into your main page. You could just select this little track icon in your upper left-hand side and just scroll to track number 2. You will see your performance in that sequence. What you could do, just grab your selector and select your entire performance, hit Shift, copy. Now let's go to track number 4. Make sure you're on beat 1 and bar 1. Hit Shift, paste. Now we have the exact same performance on a different track with a different program. It's very important that you duplicate your program, because if you start adding filters without duplicating the program and just adding that performance to a different track, it's going to affect your actual original sample program. And forgive me if it sounds a bit confusing, but that's going to be a whole different videos explaining the difference between tracks and programs, because it could be a bit confusing if you're just getting started. If you guys want a video on that topic, let me know down in the comments, but just make sure you're duplicating your sample or your drum program, because that's where your audio chops are located in. So now that we're in track number 4 with our duplicate performance, I'm actually gonna solo track number 4. So we just listened to track number 4. I'm gonna name track number 4. I'm gonna put just bass. Once I have that sampled right there, or that named right there, bass, I can go ahead and start using some filters to filter out all of the high frequencies and just stay with all of our low frequencies. The way I'm gonna do that, there's different ways you can do it. Don't feel like what I'm gonna show you right now is the only way to filter out your samples. There's different plugins that the MPC comes with, but this is one of my go-to ways. I'll actually jump into my program editor. Once I'm in my program editor, I'm gonna go into my envelope/filters section. And once you're right here, you're gonna see 3 little dots at the bottom, and you're gonna make sure you click it again until you're at the center dot or the second dot. Once you're right there, you're going to see your filters. Right here in this filters, you could select this little first option where it says low 2. And you could experiment with all these filters, but I actually like going to the MPC filter, which is all the way at the end. And once I'm right there, I'm gonna select my cutoff. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hit play, and as I hit play, I'm gonna bring down that cutoff. So what it's doing, it's just cutting off all of your high frequencies and leaving you with the low subby sound of this sample. Let's go ahead and listen. All right, so right here, we have some very subby frequencies that you can't really hear, but you could definitely feel these frequencies depending on where you're listening to this video. Even though they're very low and subby, I'm okay with that because I'm gonna use some other plugins to bring out some grit from that sub bass that we're listening to right now. What I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna go into my main page, and going into my main page, I'm gonna open up this little eyeball icon, and I'm gonna go into my program selector. So we're gonna select the entire program of this bass sample, and I'm gonna jump into my inserts. As a matter of fact, I had Mother Ducker. I'm gonna turn that off. I'm going to turn off a couple of the other plugins that I had on the previous sample program. But right here, what I'm going to add, I'm going to go and track or into insert number 3, and I'm going to add, where is it at? And under harmonics, if you're running the latest update, you're going to go into Amp Simulator. Amp Simulator is actually really cool because this thing right here is kind of like a distortion pedal, and it really helps bring out some grit from that subby bass sample. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just play around with this. We're going to listen to different cab modes, and I'm going to just drive my signal. As I drive my signal with this drive knob, you're going to notice that the sub bass sound is going to start having some type of distortion harmonics that give a little more grit to that sound. So let's go ahead and hit play and listen to what we have. Now, obviously, this is a lot of gritty drive, but I don't like how this sounds. This is a cab DI, but it's okay. I'm gonna leave it right there. Let's keep going through and listen to other cab modes. Whew. That one's all right. Oh, this one's it. I'm gonna drive up the drive. Now I'm gonna jump over here to my bass settings right here. Woo, bring up the bass. On your mids, let's probably knock down those mids, the low mids. Oh. And this mid frequency right here, it allows you to select which mid frequencies you're taking off. So I'm gonna go down to about 400 hertz. Oh man. You could even go to your treble and add some treble. Yo, that sounds nice. I'm gonna go back up to my drive and bring down the drive a bit. Woo! Okay. There's the sub frequencies that sound really heavy. Again, if you're in your car, if you're in studio monitors and some headphones, you can feel that sub. But you also drive it a little bit with this amp simulator to make it stand out. It not get buried with your sample, or I'm sorry, with your drums, with your other sample. Now, what I'm going to do is we're just soloing this. I highly recommend that it's okay to hit solo and make some mixing decisions while you're in solo, but it's always important to get off of solo. And now let's hear it in the mix with our sample and our drums, because I'm sure now that we hear it with our mix, we might jump back into Amp Simulator and adjust some of the settings so it can better be blended with our entire beat. Yeah. I actually could drive the signal a lot more. Yo! I'm gonna make the stereo signal to mono. Yes. Now, let's do one last thing. Let's go back to our sample. And in our sample, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jump into our sample program. I'm gonna go into the EQ of that sample program. I'm gonna go to the low frequencies of that sample As a matter of fact, you know what? No, I'm not gonna do that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use one of these. Actually, I have a slot number 4 available. I'm gonna open up slot number 4 and I'm going to go to my filters and I'm gonna add a high pass filter. The reason why I'm adding a high pass filter is because I'm gonna filter out some of the low frequencies of that sample program, so I can give that frequency spectrum to the new bass subby sample program that we just created. Hopefully this is making sense. So I'm gonna carve out some of the low frequencies of the sample, so the sample could just be focused on one thing, and it's the highs, the mid highs, and the low mids. And the sub or bass sample program is focusing to just take care of all the low frequencies of this beat. Let's go ahead and listen. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna solo this right now. And let's just listen to the sample. I don't wanna filter out everything. I'm gonna just bring it back down at about, let's say 200 hertz. Now, I'm gonna mute the bass so we can listen to this before and after that bass that we just added. That's a big difference. There's one last thing that I'm gonna go over, and this is actually really cool because the reason why I don't like using this method is because it gets very muddy and there's just a lot going on. And sometimes, yes, you do have the subby frequencies coming out of that sample, but there's a lot of other frequencies that still sneak in, and it just kind of dirties up or muddies your low end of the beat, and it just doesn't sound right. But this is actually a really cool way that I can attack those problems. Is I'm gonna jump into my grid editor, and in my grid editor, I'm gonna go into this sample base program that we've just duplicated. And right here, we see bank A, we have our sample chops. In bank B, I still have those sample chops, and on bank C, there's no more of samples right here. These are blank. These are dead samples. So what I'm gonna do, this sample program is, all these are cutting each other off, so they're in the same mute group. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hit play, and I'm going to mute certain sections of this performance so I can have a little more of an accented bass. So for example, I'm gonna go ahead and let's make sure we are able to solo this, and let me... Now that's cool, but it's just extending too much, and I don't want the whole entire beat just to be bass, 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 bass. Like, that's why I don't like this method, because it gets very dirty and it muddies up my mix. Just, I'm not a big fan of it. But this method, I'm gonna use some of these blank sample chops or pads to just cut off some of my samples or some of those bass chops so it's a little more clean and there's some accents going on, and it's not just all bass, bass, bass. Let's say, for an example, I want the bass to hit on the kick, boom, and on the snare, I want the bass to just cut off. So what I'll do is I'll grab this note right here and just cut that off. So now it's just the bass on the kick, but it's still kind of that bass chop, it kind of keeps going. I wanted to cut off as soon as the snare hits. So what I'll do is I'm gonna overdub and just throw in one of these blank pads right when the snare hits, so it cuts it off completely. Awesome. So that right there is just kind of giving some more accent to that bass. Yo, okay, so that's a lot better. I like how that sounds. I like how it feels. Now it's kind of giving some dynamics to the bass performance. Not that I'm trying to make it sound like a real bass player, but it's just not all bass, bass, bass throughout the whole entire beat performance. Again, you guys can do whatever you want. If you guys like the sound of that, by all means, go ahead and rock with the bass just playing throughout the whole entire beat. All right, so if you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out the part 1 and part 2 of adding bass on top of sample bass production. I'm sure those methods are gonna be as helpful as this one, so make sure you guys check some of those out. If you guys made it to the end of this video, make sure you guys hit the thumbs up. Thank you for hanging out with me. Much love, peace. I'll catch y'all on our next video. Peace.